Who is quite possibly the worst person in the Bible that you can think of? Now, for a lot of us, we think of Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot, of course, was the disciple, part of the inner 12 that actually betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And today's scripture is Mark 14:10. Then Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went to the chief priests in order to betray him. So why would Judas actually do this? As we read more throughout the first 4 books of the Bibles, the Gospels, we see a little bit more into Judas's life and that he had a love of money. Matthew 26:15, Judas speaking, "What will you give me if I deliver him over to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. Judas is also the one that talks about how the perfume that is crushed and used on Jesus's feet could have been sold for a lot of money and given to the poor. We also see in different parts where Judas was actually taking money from the money bag. He was in charge of the money for Jesus's ministry. So being the guy who actually betrays Jesus, is that make him the worst possible person in the Bible? And a lot of people, I think, would say yes. I mean, he's the guy who delivered them over to the high priest and then Jesus was crucified. But let's take a look at a few more verses and ask the question, could Judas still have been redeemed? Matthew 27, then when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." They said, "What is it to us? See to it yourself." And throwing down the 30 pieces of silver in the temple, he departed and went and hanged himself. So what actually happened here? Judas realized that what he did was seriously wrong. And he takes his money, the thing that he thought would bring him joy and happiness, and he throws it down in the temple, which relates to prophecy in Jeremiah, by the way. And we can actually see the remorse that Judas is going through. Now, as we see, Judas actually went and hung himself. He felt like he could not have been redeemed. But throughout the Bible, we constantly see God reaching out to his people, always giving them the option to turn around and come back to him. So my question would be, how is Judas any different? And betraying the Son of God to death is pretty high on the list of sin. But I would argue that Judas could have been redeemed. Instead of going and hanging himself, as he throws down the money, he could have gone, seen the crucifixion of Jesus, and as Jesus is raised from the dead, thrown himself like so many times in the Old Testament on the mercy seat of Christ, repenting of his sins, and he could have been saved. So I really believe that the only way that Judas was not saved is because he went out and committed suicide. And as we think about truths in old hymns, the vilest offender who truly believes, who turns from what he's done and comes to Christ, that believes in their heart and confesses with their mouth, will be saved. Thanks for joining me for this Daily Jesus Minute.